Hello, am I audible, guys?
Yeah, you are.
Yes,
Okay. So, hi guys, this is the second day of our workshop in which we'll be covering the CSS part as we will be continuing the previous session in which we were making the portfolio. We will complete the portfolio today. We will let you go through the CSS part. And yeah, so I think we are good to go. So over to you. Poorvi will be taking your session. And yes, over to you, Poorvi.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Poorvi Chaudhary, a third-year student of Computer Science and Engineering, a full-stack web developer, and also the technical head of GFG HMRITM. I have done various projects and internship in web development, and currently I'm exploring my skills in React.js and looking forward to be a MERN-stack developer. So I hope you like the session, and I'm really very excited to have a conversation with you all on CSS. So I think we should not waste any more time and start the session. Okay, so I'll be presenting my screen now. Just confirm whether my screen is visible or not. Okay. Okay, can anyone confirm whether it is
yes,
visible or not?
yes, it's visible.
Okay, great. So let's start. Let's wait for it to present. Okay, great. So today we'll be discussing about CSS, and this will be our index or our basically the whole concept which we'll be discussing today. What is CSS, CSS syntax, the box model, the grid, Bootstrap, and our main project, that is the portfolio project. And in the end, we'll have a short Q&A session. If you guys have any doubt in the whole session, you guys can ask in that particular time. So let's begin. Okay, so what is CSS? CSS is nothing. It stands for Cascading Style Sheet. It is basically a file which is linked with HTML, sometimes, not every time, because there are basically three types of CSS, three ways of CSS that we can write. So it is basically a file that contains different properties that we assign to any element of HTML. Basically, here's an example with which you can understand. Now, what is the difference between HTML and CSS? See, HTML is basically there for providing a rough layout as to which elements will be there on our web page, whether it will be a paragraph, it will be a button. Basically, it contains all those elements which we want to display on our web page. But on the other hand, CSS is basically that particular file that contains styling for those elements. How we want to style our page, what sort of color combination we want, what sort of background we want, all these things come in CSS section. So that was the basic difference between HTML and CSS. So this is how we write a CSS, basic CSS syntax. Whenever we select any particular element from HTML, we call it a selector in CSS. So here is an example of a div. We call div a selector in CSS, and inside I have given a property of color and text align. Basically, I'll show you this with an example. Wait. So here I have a HTML file in which I have a heading, a paragraph, a button, and an anchor tag. Now what I'll do is, first I'll explain you different ways to write CSS. Basically, there are three ways in which we can write CSS. First is external way, the internal way, and then the inline way. I hope you guys have heard about inline way in the previous session, that is yesterday. So again, I'll be giving you a short description of how it works. So first, let's talk about external CSS. Now, how external CSS works. Here I have created a style.css file where I'll be containing all the properties of HTML tags which are contained in this HTML file. Now, first, it is very important to link both the files. Now, how do I link these two files? Because these are two different files. I have to link them first to show a difference. So this particular code that you can see over here is responsible for linking both CSS and HTML files. Here I have given a link. Rel basically stands for what type that file is. Whether it is a style sheet type, a JavaScript type, what type of file that particular file is. So here I have mentioned style sheet because I have created a CSS file because I want to give styling to my web page. And again, I have given a href because I want to mention what file I am linking this HTML file with. So first, what I'll do is I'll select a normal h1 tag. So I'll write here h1. Now h1 is what? h1 is my selector in CSS. So I'll give this a color of red. Now let's see whether is there any difference or not. I'll open it with my live server and let's wait for the server to start. Okay, it's not starting. Wait, I'll open this again. Okay. Let's wait for it to start now. Yeah, I think it has started. Let's give it some time. Stop. Yeah, as you can see, the H1 has turned into a red color. So this is how we basically give external. Now you must be thinking that what is this ID and class that I have mentioned over here? Basically are also used to give styling to this particular H1 tag. So what happens is generally there can be a web page where there are same H1 headlines but with different content. In that case, we assign different classes to those headlines if we want to give them different styling. So now what is the difference between a class and an ID? Basically, there can be n number of classes assigned to similar number of elements. Or we can say there can be one class that is assigned to different elements. For example, if I want to give this heading class to this paragraph class as well, say like this. So it is valid in HTML. But if I give this ID to this paragraph, it will not be valid, because in HTML, there's a rule that ID needs to be unique for every particular element. There can be one class assigned to different elements in HTML, but not one ID assigned to different elements. ID always needs to be unique, and classes can be similar for two or more elements. So we can say that every class is basically an ID, but not every ID is a class. So now if I say that I want to use this heading class to give my styling. So for class, we use dot and then the class name, that is heading, and then we provide any sort of styling, say color blue. Okay, and I'll just remove this H1 from here. And for ID, we use hash and then the ID name, that is header. And I'll give a property of font size, say 40 pixel. Now let's see what happens. As you can see, the font size has become slightly bigger, and the both paragraph and heading were turned into a blue color. Now this is how we use classes and ID in our CSS. So this was all about our external CSS. Now what about internal CSS? For internal CSS, we use a style tag inside our head like this. For now, I just remove it and I use this class, heading class. Same, we use dot for class heading, and I want to give it a color of, let's say this color. Let's see what happens. See, the color is now changed. So this is how we give internal CSS to our HTML page. Now what about inline CSS? For inline CSS, we go to that particular selector whom we want to assign any sort of property or CSS property to. And here we write again style. I just remove it from here, otherwise it won't work. Yeah. I write style attribute, and then I say color. Let's give it coral color. Okay, now let's see what happens. You can see that particular element where I have used style attribute using inline CSS was only changed. Now here's the thing. Both heading is assigned to paragraph and H1, but only H1 changed because I have assigned inline CSS to H1 only. Here we have no use of class in inline CSS, but when it comes to internal and external CSS, class and ID plays a major role, which you just saw right now. Now let's move further. Let's open our VS Code. I have already opened. Now what is a box model? To understand, to have a proper understanding of CSS, you must know a box model. Basically, box model contains these four properties: margin, border, padding, and content. I'll show you with an example what it means. Let's say, basically I remove this style from here. Like this. And I use this heading again. Okay, I remove this class as well. Yeah. So now what I want to do is, I want my body, that is the area where every HTML tag is present, this particular tag. You can see this body tag. I am using this body and I'm assigning some sort of a style to it. Say margin 30 pixel, then padding 50 pixel, and a border of 1 pixel solid and blue. Now, when I go to my document, you can see this, something like this happens here. Now, what is this margin and padding? Margin is basically used to provide space after the border of any particular element. The space that you can see after border here, after border there is some sort of a space. This space is provided with the help of margin. And what is padding? The space which we provide inside the border or inside the border and element is basically because of padding. The space that you can see over here where my cursor is between the text and the border, this is because of padding. So this is the difference between margin and padding. Margin is used to provide space after border and padding is used to provide space before border. Okay, and you know what is a border. A border is basically used to provide a border to the particular element, or in this case I have used body, so the whole body has covered into a border of 1 pixel solid and blue. And this is a shorthand syntax of border where I have assigned a dimension that how many pixels of border do I want, what type of a border do I want, is it a solid, a dashed border, what sort of a border it is, and the color of the border. It can be any color according to your choice. So now let's see what is a box model. I will go to my inspect and we'll check how a box model works. Okay. I just toggle it first. And here I will choose body. Now you can see there are different boxes that that are visible over here. And this particular thing that you can see is basically my box model for body. This blue box is for content. Content means everything that has been written inside body. An H1 tag, paragraph, button, anchor tag, everything is coming under this content box. Then we have padding. As I said, padding is used to provide space before the border. So this green line that you can see right now is because of padding, and you can see 50 is written over here because I had provided 50 pixels of padding to my body. Then this is border. As you can see, the border color has changed from blue to purple because I have assigned 1 pixel of border. So it is showing me this particular purple line that this particular thing is your border. And after that, this orange line, this orange box is my margin. And you can see 30 has been written over here, which shows that I have assigned 30 pixel of margin to my body. So this is what a box model is, and this is how you can solve your bugs. If there is any sort of error that is coming to your web page, you can always go and check your box model that what is the major issue in it. So this was all about box model. Next we have this. I just explained you the box model. Then we have CSS grid. Now in this session, we will be learning both the grids, the CSS grid as well as the Bootstrap grid. So I just tell you one thing, don't get confused both the thing in both the things, because there is a slight different in the Bootstrap grid. So that is why in the whole session I will be using the CSS grid only. So what is a CSS grid? First, I'll show you with an example how CSS grid syntax is. This particular thing, the whole div thing you can see in here, you can see here is the CSS grid. Now, there is a thing. You created a web page. Let's say you created a web page, and now the web page is not that attractive to attract users to that particular website. So now you need to make different sections to your web page to align different elements of HTML. Now these sectioning is basically possible with CSS Grid. CSS Grid is responsible for creating different rows and columns on your web page so that you can easily align different elements of HTML with the help of CSS on that web page. So this is how a syntax of CSS Grid is like. Here I have given a class of grid container, and these numbers you can see over here is something like this for now. It is coming in a vertical order in just one column and 7 rows. Now I want that I need 2 columns, like some numbers in this column and some numbers here in this column. Now how do I do it? How do I make 2 columns in my web page using this syntax? So what I'll do is I'll go to my style.css class. I'll select the class in which I want to create 2 columns, that is grid container. And now first I will use display grid. Now what display grid does, it basically allows you to display that particular element into a grid form. So this is all what display grid do. Then what I'll do is I'll use grid template columns. Now grid template columns, it basically used to assign different columns to that particular class, that is grid container. Here I will use auto and again an auto. Now why I have written 2 autos? I said that I wanted to create 2 columns. That is why I will write 2 autos. If I want to create 3 columns, so I will write 3 autos. Now let's see what difference is there. You can see there are 3 columns now. One is this, and another one is this. If I want to make just 2 columns, then remove 1 auto. And you can see just there are now just 2 columns. I'll give it a bit of more styling. For styling, I will use another class, grid1, that I have mentioned over here, grid1. And I will give a border of red color, 1 pixel solid and red. So now let's see. You can see we have a border and you can see 2 columns as well. The first one is where I have numbers of 1, 3, 5, 7, all the odd numbers, and another column does have all the even numbers. This is what CSS Grid does. It sections your web page into different columns and rows. Next we have, I've given you the example. Next we have Bootstrap. Now what is a Bootstrap? Just like CSS, we have a library called Bootstrap. Bootstrap contains all the predefined functions and classes that we can use without writing any code. You know, sometimes what happens, you create a web page and you create CSS for that web page, and sometimes the web page is so complicated that it has a lot of CSS and you yourself doesn't understand that what particular property you have assigned to any element. So there can be a lot of confusion when you use CSS from scratch. To overcome that advantage, basically Bootstrap was created. Bootstrap uses some predefined classes and functions which are already coded somewhere in the backend, and you can use it directly without writing any code of it. If you go to Bootstrap's main website, you will get its documentation over there, and you can read everything that is related to Bootstrap, buttons, paragraphs, everything to it. So this is the Bootstrap main website. You just check its documentation. It is very easy and very handy. Just go on this docs. Docs means documentation. Here you will get everything related to CSS that you write from scratch, and you just need to use this link. I have this link over here, the CSS link. Now what this link will do, this link will link my HTML file with this Bootstrap, and then without using much of CSS, I can simply and directly use Bootstrap classes and assign to my HTML tag, and everything will be similar to CSS. For example, if I copy this copy, and I use another file, this file, and here you can see I have already copied the Bootstrap CSS file. Okay. Now this HTML file is linked with Bootstrap, and now I can directly use its classes. So let's see what we have in Bootstrap. You can always come here and read its documentation. It has everything in it, every layout, everything. You can come and read. See, you can know about Z-index, its images, tables, figures, everything is there in Bootstrap. You just need to read it once. Okay. Yeah, documentation is everything. Exactly. Documentation is everything. If you want to know about Bootstrap, you need to read its documentation. So let's see what happens with Bootstrap. Okay, first thing that I want you to learn is BTN info. Basically, what is it? BTN is a class of Bootstrap that is used to give styling to a button of HTML. If I go on Bootstrap's main website, I will use 4 version. Okay, and I will write buttons over here. Let's see what happens. You can see there are different button options in Bootstrap, and I am using this BTN info. So what this BTN info do? It will change my button into this blue color. If I write BTN warning, it will change my color to this yellow color. So this is what BTN class of Bootstrap do. I didn't write any style. To it. See, this style was for this HTML file, but for this, there is no CSS file. So without using CSS, I gave color to my button using Bootstrap. So this is what is the difference between Bootstrap and CSS. It minimalizes your CSS code, and you can use this so efficiently without writing much of CSS into some other file. So let's see whether our button turned into blue color or not. Just see now. See, my button has now turned into a blue color. This is what Bootstrap does. I didn't write any CSS code. I just used one class of Bootstrap and my button changed. This is the power of Bootstrap. Then I have this thing, MX5 and PX5. Now, what is MX and PX? M stands for margin and P stands for padding. Here I am saying that I want margin from both x-axis, that is the positive x-axis and the negative x-axis, and I want a margin of 5 rem from both the positive and negative x-axis. So this is what MX do. If I remove this class, let's say I remove this class, then see what happens. Okay. Like this. Okay. First, let's see with what was the difference when it was there. You can see this particular line is now shifted to right hand side when I wrote this particular class. Now, if I remove this, let's see what happens. It has shifted again back to left. So I am saying that I want horizontal margin and padding of 5 rem from both x-axis, positive x-axis, and positive and negative x-axis. So this is what this particular class do. It provides margin and padding to the element of HTML. See, it has again shifted to right hand side. Now let's see with another example. Again, px and py. Now what is py? Just like px, we were saying that we want a padding of positive x-axis and also from negative x-axis. With py, we will say that we want a padding from positive y-axis to negative y-axis. So let's see with an example. First of all, when this class was there, this particular element was something like this. You can see. Now, if I remove this class, then see what happens. This has basically shifted its position to somewhat in the left hand side and somewhat to the above. So this is what is the difference between px and py and mx and my. Again, if I add this class to this element, you can see there is a gap between this particular line and this picture. So this is what Bootstrap classes do. Similarly, we have other classes as well, like MR, that means margin right, ML, margin left, M top, MP, and M down, MD, similar for padding. So this was all about Bootstrap basic syntax and basic classes. And more of Bootstrap we'll be covering in our main project, that is the portfolio project. So let's go to our portfolio project now. I just remove these files to, more efficient explanation. Okay. So I just told you about Bootstrap classes, that first we need to link our Bootstrap with our page. I have done it over here. I have linked my style sheet to this particular HTML file. Now, what are these two links? These two links are there to provide a basic font to my page. If you go to Google Fonts, you will get a number of fonts that you can, assign to your web page. Go to Google Fonts, select any font that you want to use, and you are good to go. This is their main website, Google Fonts, and there you will get thousands of fonts that you can use in your web page. These are these fonts. Let's say I have selected this font. So here you will get different styles related to this font. I choose this particular style, and this will provide me some links. Now this link that is there is what I have used over here. So this is basically related to Google Font. Next, there is another link called Font Family. So what this font family will do, it will assign, or it will take that font from the link that I have assigned in HTML page and then use that font in my body. See, I've written over here font family, which means I have now connected my font to the web page, and now we can see that particular font popping up on our web page. So this was all about Google Font. You can go, you can use any font, select a style, connect your link, and then use that font. Okay, next we have a class of Navbar. Now what is a Navbar? You must be thinking, what basically is a Navbar? So I'll just show you what a Navbar is. The line that you can see at the top, where there are social bar, different links, Dwayne Johnson, this particular section of my web page is a navbar. Okay, and I have used Bootstrap's navbar because it allows me to write minimum CSS, and I can basically make my code. I can increase the readability of my code so that others can understand as well. So I have used a class of navbar. That means I am telling my HTML file that this particular section is a navbar. Then I'm using another class of navbar expand LG. Now you need to understand these three concepts. There are three versions: a desktop version, a medium version, and a smaller version, which is also known as a mobile version. The screen that you are looking at right now is a desktop version, which means it is a larger version. Now, if I shrink my page, then what happens? This small resolution is known as medium version or iPad version. And if I shrink my page more, then this particular resolution is known as smaller version or mobile version. So navbar expand LG means that first I need to specify it on a larger version. This is my larger version. Next we have navbar dark. Navbar dark is basically to assign a theme to my navbar, whether it will be of white color or of darker color. Here I have assigned dark because it is in darker shade. Then we have MLMD5, MRMD5 and these other classes. Now for larger version of my screen, this larger version, we use LG. For medium version or the iPad version, we use MD, and for smaller version or mobile version, we use SM. So here we are saying that we want a ML, that means margin left, on medium version, and that should be a 5 rem. We want a margin left on our medium version and it should be a 5 rem. Now what does this mean? We want a margin right on our medium version, that should be a 5 rem. And what this means, we want a margin top on our smaller version. Now you must be thinking there is no SM in it, then how can you say it's a smaller version? This is what happens in Bootstrap. If we want to specify it in a large version, we use LG. If we want to specify a medium version, we use MD. But for smaller version, we don't use anything. We just say that we want a margin top of 4 and it will automatically understand that we want on smaller version, we want a margin top of 4 rem. So this is how Bootstrap works. Then we have another class called navbar brand. Now navbar brand is this thing that you can see over here, Dwayne Johnson, where we have written Dwayne Johnson is called my navbar brand. Navbar brand is basically that particular subject on which the web page is on which the whole web page is designed. Basically a brand to which we have dedicated this web page. Now on this web page, we are talking about portfolio of Dwayne Johnson. That is why I've written Dwayne Johnson over here, because Dwayne Johnson is my major subject for this web page. So this is what navbar brand do. Then we have navbar toggler. Okay, so what is a navbar toggler? First of all, on the larger version, you see navbar like this. Now, if I shrink my page to mobile version, then there will be a difference. Let's see what difference will be there. You can see that this is my medium version, that is the iPad version. There is no difference in the navbar now. Now, in the mobile version, the navbar has been shrunk. The navbar is toggled. So this changing of navbar is basically navbar toggling. Okay. So I have said that I want to toggle my navbar into what type? A button type. Which means that whenever we will be in a mobile version, the navbar will be turned into or will be toggled into a button. And this button is this. So this is another class of Bootstrap which tells that we want to toggle our navbar into a button. And again, all these things are basically syntax of navbar in Bootstrap. So you have to use it this way only. There you can read the whole documentation of how this syntax works. So these were the basic classes of navbar for, these were the basic classes of Bootstrap for navbar. Again, this is another class called Navbar toggler icon. So this icon that you can see, this button type, is basically our Navbar toggler icon. We also call it hamburger icon. Okay. Then we have collapse navbar collapse class. It means that we want to collapse our navbar into a button type, into that icon when we will be in our mobile version. And all these classes of navbar, nav, and mr auto. Mr auto means we want a margin right auto, which means as per its size or length, it will automatically take some margin right. Automatically it will take some sort of margin right as per the requirement of the web page. We have not specified any sort of dimension to it, so it's all dependent on the web page now. Then we have nav item and nav link. Nav item is basically these things which I'm going to show you just now. The things that you can see here, about, project, certification, these are my nav items, which means that all these things will be present in my nav bar. And what is nav link? There must be something linked to these nav items. When I click on about, you can see it redirects me to this section. This particular effect is known as nav link, that I have linked that section with this nav item. Next, we have a grid. Now we will talk about Bootstrap Grid. For that, I'll just go on Bootstrap and I'll show you what a grid is. Yeah. There is whole documentation of Bootstrap Grid. You can always come on Bootstrap and read its documentation. Okay. So in Bootstrap Grid, basically Bootstrap has a class called container class. What this container class will do, it will contain everything into a container like this. If you can see this particular section where there is a picture, some text, it has some spacing over here from left hand side, the top, the right hand side. This is what a container class do. It contain it into a small box which has its own margin and padding, automatically defined with the help of Bootstrap. Now what a Bootstrap grid do, it says that a container class is basically divided into 12 sections, or we can say 12 columns. Now we can combine those sections into any number of columns. For example, if you can see, I have written column MD7, which means that I want to create a column in the medium version that must contain 7 sections out of 12. That means this column will be slightly bigger in width than compared to another column in which my image is there. As you can see, this particular column is bigger than this image column because I have assigned 7 sections out of 12 to this column and remaining 5 sections out of 12 to this particular image section. So this is how Bootstrap Grid works. It basically has some calculation in it, and another important thing is you always have to create columns whose sum is equal to 12. You can't use a number bigger than 12. If I write 6 over here, it is not valid. It is not valid because 7 plus 6 is out of the bound of 12. You always have to create columns that cover only the 12 sections because Bootstrap allows 12 sections only. So that is why we had written 5 over here. As you can see, when I wrote 6, the image goes down because Bootstrap didn't allow a number of sections beyond 12. That is why Bootstrap Grid is so much complex that it has everything predefined in its backend, and you need to just use the classes, and everything will happen on its own. Just you need to take care of the number of columns you create with the help of those 12 sections. Then we have MP5. That means on the smaller version we want a margin top of 5 rem. Another class is order. Now what does order class do? Okay. In this particular version, that is the larger version, you can see my text is on the left hand side and my image is on the right hand side. If I shrink my page into a medium version, let's see what happens. In medium version also, it is quite similar. The text on the left hand side and the image on the right hand side. Now if I toggle my page into a mobile version, you can see the image comes up. It is no more like medium and large version. So this is what happens with the help of order class. It basically assigns any sort of order into any version. It can be a large version, a medium version, or a smaller version. So here I have written order 2. Since there is no LG or MD or SM, so by default it will consider it as a smaller version. Order 2. And order 2 is of these text, which means then we will be on our smaller version. The text must come second. And for image, we have given class of order 1, which means whenever we will be on a mobile version, the image should come first and then the text. Whereas in case of medium version, we have said that order of the text must be first and order of image must be second. So whenever I toggle my page to iPad version, you can see the text is first and the image is second. So this is what happens with the order class of Bootstrap. Okay. Now everything after that is Bootstrap Grid. I'll show you. This particular section is a Bootstrap Grid, which I explained just now. This section as well is a Bootstrap Grid. How? We have 2 columns of 6 sections each. This column also has 6 sections and this column also has 6 sections out of 12. This column has 3 rows, 1, 2 and 3, to contain these cards. And here it is just a text, as you can see. See, we have 2 columns, column MD6 and another column, column MD6, 2 columns. In the first column, we have 3 rows, which signifies these 3 cards. And in the second column, we have just a text. This is all about Bootstrap Grid. And beyond this, everything is Bootstrap Grid on this project. Here also we have Bootstrap Grid going on, 2 columns. In the project sections also we have 4 columns. Now this is a bit tricky. We want to assign 4 columns and we have only 12 sections. So 12 divided by 4 is 3. That means each column contains 3 sections out of 12. Here we have 2 columns, but this column is slightly bigger than this column, which means this column has more number of sections out of 12 as compared to this column. And this also we have 2 columns, 6 sections to this column, because both of them are equal. 6 sections to this column and 6 sections to this column. So this is how Bootstrap Grid works. This was all about the HTML and the Bootstrap part of our portfolio project. You can go on Bootstrap Documentation, read about grid, read about buttons, margin and padding, and you will understand it in a better way. Then let's go on the style.css file. Now what is this star? Star basically signifies that I want to assign this behavior to the whole web page, no matter it is a heading, it is a paragraph, anything. This sort of behavior must be there in the whole web page to the body. So if I remove this thing, let's see what happens. When you click on it, about, you can see instantly the section is now changed. If I click on project, the instant action takes place. But if I again add this particular line, then what happens? If you click on about, you can see a slight action is taking place. There is a scrolling behavior, a smooth scrolling behavior. Now again, let's click on another link, let's say certification. A smooth scrolling takes place. So this is what scroll behavior does. It makes our scrolling better and smooth. Then we have background color and font family. I already explained that how we attach our font to our pages. So this is another property of CSS called background color. The color that you can see, some grayish texture color, is because of this background color. You can give it in hexagonal codes. If you don't want to give it in hexagonal code, you can always write the color like red, green, blue, gray, anything, and it will work. Then we have a background color property to our navbar class. Navbar to our navbar only, because there is no dot, so we won't say it is a class. So the navbar colors also is same as that of the background. Then we have another property of color. Now this color, what this color do? It provides color to the text. Okay, color to the text. If you see that whenever we hover on it, hover means whenever I place my cursor on any particular element, whenever I hover on it, the color of this text changes. It is because of this particular property called color property. You can give any color to any text. And hover means I have placed my cursor on that element. To provide a hover effect, this is the syntax. We need to use these colon and then we write hover on anything, on any element on which we want to provide our hover effect to. So if I hover on it, we can see the color of the text changes. Next we have before and after. Now what are these two things? Okay. When I click on any link of navbar, you can see there are two brackets coming on hovering. So this has happened with the help of before and after. Before means I want this particular content to add with my text whenever I hover on it. And after means I want to add this particular content to my text after the text on hovering. So whenever I hover on about, you can see before and after takes place. Both the contents are clearly visible. Clearly visible. So this is about after and before. Again, same property, color, you to give color to the text, to give gray color to the text. Then we have font size. Now font size equal to 22 pixel. It is used to give font, to increase size of any font in our web page, on our web page. So if you can see, there are three icons. If I increase my font size to 50, let's see what happens. You can see my icons have become bigger. So this is what font size does. It increases a size of the element. Again 22, and the size will shrink. You can see the size is now shrink. So this is what a CSS, the property of font size does. Then anything new? Yeah, border. I've told you about what a border is. Again, now what is a line height? Okay. The two lines that you are seeing here right now, and the space between these two lines is possible with the help of line height. I have given a line height of 62 pixels, which means I want some sort of a space between these two lines, and that space should be of 62 pixels. So this is what line height does. It basically provides space between the two lines. Then we have text decoration none. Okay. If you see on this particular link, let's talk, whenever I hover on it, the color of let's talk change, and also it becomes slightly light. But if I remove this property from here, if I comment it out, then see what happens. You can see an underline is coming on hovering. This is what text decoration does. In anchor tag, there is some sort of default decoration going on. So if you don't want that default decoration, you can use this property and you can say that I want no default decoration on my text. And when you when you examine that particular property, you can see changes are there. There is no underline now. So this is what text decoration does. Then we have another thing called box shadow. Okay, box shadow. Here you can see 3 cards. Whenever I hover on it, there is some sort of a shadow going on. Okay, so this particular shadow effect is possible with the help of this box shadow. The syntax of box shadow is this. First, we provide the color, what color of shadow we want. Then the 3 dimensions, that is x dimension, y dimension, and z dimension. So I want a color of this particular theme, RGBA. RGBA stands for red, green, blue, and alpha. Alpha basically stands for opacity. How opaque that particular thing should be. We learned about 3 things: transparent, translucent, and opaque. Similarly, opacity is somewhat similar to opaque. If I write 1 over here, it will be opaque. It will be fully opaque. And if I write this over here, it will be slightly translucent. So this is what opacity does. Though it is alpha, but this thing is considered as opacity. Then we have 3 dimensions. X dimension has 0 pixels, Y dimension has 2 pixels, and Z dimension has 4 pixels. So with the help of that syntax, we can see this effect of shadow over here on hovering. Okay. Then we have transition. Okay. So what is transition? When I hover on this card, we can see there is very smooth transition of lifting up of the cards. We can see that it's like cards are lifting up and they are in a very smooth speed. So this happens with the help of this transition property. Here I am saying that I want to apply transition to all. All means that whatever thing is there in this class, card class, must have this transition property for 0.3 seconds, and the type of transition should be ease in out. So this is all about the property of transition. You can see there is slight movement in the cards. So this is all because of transition property. Then another property we have is the transform property. What is this transform property does? Okay, you can see we have talked about box shadow, the shadow which we can see. We talked about transition, the slight movement. Now what is transform? Transform is this 3D effect which you can see. This 3D effect on hovering that you can see. It is because of this transform property. In transform property, I have used translate 3D because I wanted a 3D effect. And again, we have a similar syntax than the box shadow. We have 3 dimensions, the X dimension, Y dimension, and the Z dimension. And I have assigned some pixels to it. So this means that I want this 3D effect on my cards. And since I have given this syntax, so we can see that 3D effect on the cards. Next, we have font weight bolder. Font weight in many Microsoft Office or Word or PowerPoint, we see there are three effects: italic, underline, and bold. So in this, we don't use italic and underline, but if we want to give our text a bolder effect, a little bolder effect, we use font weight. We can also give lighter, larger, bolder, or anything with the help of this font weight. How much weight that particular text must have is all because of this font weight bolder. Then we have all the similar properties, the color, the background color, everything. I have already explained it. Then we have these media queries. Now, what is this media query? This is my larger version, okay? I want to shrink it to mobile version, that is the smaller version. I toggle it, and this is my smaller version. Many times what happens is, if you create a web page, obviously we will first create our larger version, only then we can create a smaller version. But in larger version, there can be some misalignments when we convert it into smaller version. To remove those misalignments, we use media queries. This is known as media query. Media query is responsible for shorter version, to provide styling to shorter versions like mobile and iPad version. Here is my iPad version. To provide styling to mobile and iPad version, we use media queries. So here I have given maximum width of 200 pixels to my image container, which means this image. I have reduced the width of this image on what? Smaller version. If I remove this thing, see, the image has become bigger. But if I again change my screen size to smaller version, you can see the image has now become lesser in width. This is because of these media queries. I have told my HTML page that whenever you will be shifted to smaller version, use this. Otherwise, there can be problems and your web page will not look good and will not look responsive. This shifting of version is known as responsiveness. How responsive is your web page? How efficient is it? It can work both in larger, medium, and smaller version. This is what responsiveness is. A web page must be responsive. It must have everything in all the three versions, no matter a larger version, a medium version, and a smaller version. And this smaller version effect we can achieve with the help of our media queries. So let's move. What else we have in our project? Exactly. HTML and CSS can work together very well, but Bootstrap has its own advantage. It makes your code more efficient. It makes your code more readable. So if we use CSS and Bootstrap together, we can make a quite responsive and efficient code. Then we have some extras. Here you can see, like Bootstrap, these things are also there on the internet. Materialize, CSS, Tailwind. Just like Bootstrap has some classes, these things also have some classes. It depends on a person's preference, which one to prefer. Everything is great. All you need to do is read their documentation. You can choose any one of it, which way you are comfortable, and choose it, read its documentation, try to implement in your project, and you are good to go. This particular website over here is Dribbble. Dribbble have a number of inspirations of web pages. I'll show you. There are a number of web pages from which you can take inspiration from, like this. See, you can see a lot of web page styles over here. If you are keen to create a website, you can always go on Dribbble, choose a select, take inspiration from it, and try to create your own website from it. Dribbble is a great website to take inspiration of designs of CSS for your web page. Then these are some keynotes. always remember this thing, that a good developer is a good Googler. If you know how to find things from Google, you will always have this advantage with you to use things efficiently in your code. So use things in a smart way. Not you don't need to read everything. Read those things which are required at that particular time. Only then you will be able to cover a lot in shorter time. So now we have our Q&A session. If you guys have any doubt or anything regarding anything, you guys can ask me. In the end, I have this resources. I will just present it for now to show you guys the resources. Yeah, so these are my resources. You can go on this link. There is everything that you need to know about CSS and HTML. Every sort of thing is there on this resource. We will share you this link in few minutes. Then yeah, thank you for the session. Before that, I want to tell you, if you are curious to know about any property, simply write the property name, say box shadow, and then write GFG. Geeks for Geeks has everything on their website. You can simply click on it, read that property explanation, and then use it in your code. Just go on Geeks for Geeks, read that properties documentation and description, and then use it. If I want to know about border, CSS, GFG, everything is available on Geeks for Geeks, as you can see. So just Google things up and try to use it on your own. So this was all from my side. If you guys have any doubt, please ask, and thank you.
Yeah, there are a few questions in the chat box. Okay, this is showing how to add this scrolling feature in the website.
Okay, I just wait. I'll present my screen again.
When we click on Navbar, right, certification about us studies, then how is it scrolled down?
Okay. See, there is a thing. You don't always need to add different pages with your HTML file. Okay, we do it with the help of IDs. As I told you the difference about classes and ID, this is what ID does. In every section, I have assigned some sort of IDs. Okay, so those, see, like this one, basic add-on one, it is an ID. And I have connected this ID with my Navbar. Wait, I'll show you how. See, you can see these href contains IDs because there is hash written before it. So I have connected those sections with ID, and as soon as I click on any of the ID in the Navbar, there is that particular scrolling behavior. So on just one web page, by creating IDs, we have achieved this particular task. It is done with the help of IDs. Anything else?
Yeah, Poorvi, this is Abhishek. First of all, thank you so much. The session was amazing and it was really helpful to me. And one question, when we are coming from the website to the mobile resolution, do we have any font size properties where as we reduce the size, as we click, for example, now we have a page over here, first solve the problem, then write the code. So I've given font size as 50 px. When it comes to mobile, it should come to 30. So do we have any properties like that?
No. See, I told you about Bootstrap. Bootstrap has already some things written in its backend. It contains all the media query code as well. It contains all the desktop code as well. So with the help of Bootstrap, just by using classes, you don't need to write anything else. It automatically becomes responsive. So this is what the advantage of Bootstrap is.
Okay.
Hello. Yeah, Poorvi, like Abhishek Abhishek wants to like say like that key, okay, like in desktop version we have a 50 pixel thing, whichever text it is. Okay, and when we convert, when we shrink our mobile version, can we change that font size to 30 pixel anyhow?
Exactly, we can change it. See, it is always better to use Bootstrap, but if you are not comfortable that with Bootstrap that well, so you can use that particular thing in media queries as well. Just choose the selector and give your particular property. Simple.
Okay, I remember one day a person was telling that if you use for the font size and all, EM, REM and all is there, right? The units. So if you use something like that, when we move from one resolution to the other resolution, the size will get shrink. Is it true? Will it happen like that?
Okay, see, it depends with different things. Like Pixel have its own thing going on, RAM has its own thing going on. So it depends with the basically the unit.
Yes. So will that unit make any changes when we move from one resolution to the other resolution? By default, it will reduce the size?
If you don't use, yeah, I guess it will.
It will. Okay. Fine. Yeah. Thank you. Do you have any idea about the position properties, or we have to search through this?
See, we haven't used position in this particular project, but you can always go on Bootstrap and read its documentation. It's quite easy, or you can just Google it on GFG's official website, and there you can have your property, position property, whole documentation there.
Okay, and one last question. Do you have any materials, or in the future, do you have any plan for doing the same thing for React?
Yes, basically we have, but since I said that I am exploring React right now, I'm not that through with it. So we will have a session once we are through with React.
Okay, cool. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, Abhishek. So yeah, we will have a React session also. We have a React guy in our team. Like server knows how to do React, and we all are exploring the React things. It's not a one day thing, right? So React is very vast. As you know, React is based on JavaScript, and JavaScript, and making you people understand JavaScript is a big thing. That would take around 2 or 3 sessions.
Okay.
And JavaScript is never ending, so it's a library of that, and surely we will do that thing.
Sure. Thank you. Yes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Any more doubts?
Okay, there is a question. If already Bootstrap has media queries written in the backend, why should we again write media queries in our code?
Okay. See, media queries are there in Bootstrap, I agree, but we have used an image over here. We didn't use Bootstrap for an image. That is why I used media query to basically align my image in both medium and smaller version. So it's nothing that always we need to use Bootstrap. If we know something by scratch, we can use it, and it's always good to explore things. So yeah.
So that's, I think, yeah. Okay, how you customize the picture in circular path? Dipansh Malhotra asked this.
See, the picture was already in circular shape, but if you want to do it, if you want to change a square shaped picture to a circular shape, you can use a property called border radius. What border radius will do, it basically provide a radius to that particular picture. I'll show you on GFG. Wait. Border radius property. GFG. Border radius property is basically there. You know, these curved edges that you can see is because of these border radius property. So you can increase the dimension just to make it more curvy and into a circular shape. So this is what border radius property do.
So, any more question, guys? You can unmute also. Like it's there is no such thing like you have to write in chat. If you have any more questions, you can unmute yourself and ask. Okay, feedback from, we will provide the feedback from Harshita. Are you there?
Yes.
Yash, just provide them with the resource link also.
Yeah, I have already done that.
Yeah.
It's there in the chat box.
Okay, great.
Okay. Hi everyone, am I audible?
Yes, Harshita, you are.
Yes.
Okay. So firstly, thank you so much everyone for attending the session and staying till the last. Poorvi has explained the CSS part really well, and yesterday the HTML part was done already. So basically, the fixed template for the portfolio website is here with you now. This is only just one template that we designed, and obviously you can make your own changes, experiment with making like everything you can experiment with and come up with your own website. And we are actually happy to wrap up this session today. This was a 2-day boot camp that we conducted, and I'm really happy to see that we today we crossed the limit as well. So people are connected with us on YouTube. And okay, so that was all from my side. Now I'm sharing the feedback form. You can fill your honest feedback there, like everything you want us to improve or anything. And that also a disclaimer, that won't have any effect on the certificate. Certificate will be provided to everyone who will be filling the form. This form is just for our reference so that we can perform better next time as well. So yes, forms are there on your screen, in the chat box you can see. So you can fill the forms, and yes, if you have any more doubts, you can share your doubts or queries here. Yes, that was from my side.
Okay guys, so yeah, the portfolio link, I'll share it with you. If you like, do you want to build it from the scratch? Like, as we have less time, so we have explained it using HTML. We are covering HTML, CSS and Bootstrap, and also this portfolio project. So
yeah, we can have a coding session as well.
Yeah, so you need to request to our chairman Harshita to have a coding session, live coding session. We can put it in night if you are available. Like, night coding is something really good. So if you want to have a session where I will sit along, or anyone from our team will sit along and code this from the writing from the HTML tag to ending to the media queries. It may take around 2 hours, but we will. But for that, you need to request to our chairman to allow us to have this session and write a hashtag, Harshita, please allow us. I'll start with that.
I guess we can put their feedbacks in the form, and if we have queries, if we have requests for the session, we can definitely go for the same. It depends on people.
I have started with the hashtag. Now you people can also do that.
Actually, we should go with मतलब ये मेरा नहीं है ना, this is like GFG, so हम GFG का कर सकते थे hashtag. This is like a teamwork. And yeah,
see, Abhishek is with me. I need more. 2 votes won't do. 98 people are there. 98 people. Yes. Ashish Kumar. Now we will have fun. Harshita, please allow. See, this reached 20 and we will allow it. Okay.
At least aim for 50% ना. अगर 100 लोग हैं तो 50 लोग करेंगे तब.
Server, you have to also type. Server Nimesh. Come on, guys.
Our team.
Can we also have an advanced CSS boot
Can
camp?
we do advanced CSS boot camp?
We can definitely have it. We'll be thinking on it. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, sure.
Basically, like one by one, we will be getting all the things that I guess one person asked for a React session as well, right? So maybe we can call someone who already know React, and they can share their experience and the live coding in front of them.
Yeah, sure, we can do that. But before that, like, as for our audience, we have gone in a chronological order: HTML, CSS. So for React, the people should know about JavaScript also. So we need to do a session. I think there are number of, Harshita, please allow.
And also in the feedback, I have received like 70 responses. Like 5 minutes we knew and 70 responses already.
Dipansh has written 2 times. No, deserves a shout out.
Okay, guys, I guess we can think of it, and obviously you can be a part of the GFG official group so that you are you are tuned with the coming up sessions. So I'm sharing that link as well. If any of you is not in the group, I request you to please join that group as well, so you will be informed of the sessions we are doing. Yes, that was all from our side, I guess. Anything else, Yash?
Yeah, that's all. And you can provide the social media link for the Instagram and LinkedIn link also, where they can connect.
Okay. Basically, let's share the website with them. We have a website, right? So on the website, we have all the things that you need, like the social media links and then upcoming sessions, our team. You can connect with the team members as well. So everything on the website. Okay, let's end the session for now, and the feedback form will be open till 2 p.m. today. So if you haven't filled the form, you can fill the form, and the certificates will be sent to you within this week. So yes, that was all. I guess we can end the session now.
Okay, guys.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So much. Thank you, everyone. It's a great session.